U.S. Embassy in Tehran.
Lizards have a lot of money.
Where are you going?
Supporters sort of come out of the closet.
America several tons of 100 years old.
My mother started taping at the birth of the 24-hour news cycle.
24 hours.
She was saying, well, we got to get this. Nobody else is going to keep this. She hit record and she never stopped.
She was very mysterious and very private.
She lived in the richest part of the city.
She had 9 homes packed to the gills.
She was a hoarder. She hoarded everything.
Who decides what's normal? I think maybe a re-examination of what is normal is in order at this point.
My mother was enormously controlling. It was a long point of contention between her and me about my boringly conventional intellect compared to her. She was definitely spied on by the FBI.
You don't want me in there. No, you make it work. You have kept me out of your institution. You want to stop faith in the democratic process. Make it work.
The child fell while playing with other toddlers yesterday morning.
I don't think a lot of people knew the real Marion.
Taping these programs for my mother was a form of activism. She wanted people to be able to seek the real truth.
You need to deal with people who are living a different reality than yours.
She was obsessed with how media reflects a society back to itself.
Those in power are able to write their own history.
Hey, you know what the funniest thing about people's beef with the Accountability Archives is? That sentiment finna go on the drive, too. That shit finna be archived, too. That y'all was pissed that people were archiving your bullshit sentiment. That too is worth the historical and sociological archiving, baby. That people didn't want to be held accountable. People didn't want people to remember the bullshit that they was saying. That's paragraph 2 of some kid's future essay 20 years from now. First, it was talking about how society was talking about certain stuff, and then paragraph 2 is going to be the dissent against accountability. All this arguing, all this dissent, all this arguing, all this gaslighting that this is only going against black women and black liberal people, this too is something that's going to be documented. That is so fucking funny. That, everything we do exists within the context, bro. You think you just fell from a coconut tree? Everything we do is historical, babe. We are living in history now. Your thoughts, your sentiments, the way you change is history. And some of y'all are so pissed off or so upset about the idea that, oh yeah, what you said and what your beliefs could be called back in front of your face. You're so scared about that you can't even see how you can change. That's the real sad part about this. All of us have some fucked up shit that we're thinking because we are existing in this same fucked up system. But you can't even see the way that you can change because you're afraid of facing your past self. No wonder history keeps repeating itself, baby. We do. We the history that keep repeating itself.
Bitch!
Well. Here we are again. Let's have a conversation. Hi, if you don't know who I am, my name is Madison. I'm the creator behind the Madiswan channel. I have a podcast called Bloodstained where I talk about history through the lens of true crime. Season 1 is all about slavery, and today I'm coming to you with another video of me embroiled in TikTok drama, unfortunately. Now, the basis of this TikTok drama centers around the Palestinian cause, so if you would take a moment before we get into the tea, into the gossip, into the drama, into the breakdown, into my feelings about everything, please venture down into the link in my bio. Please hit the link, scroll down to the humanitarian link that I have. It has links for Congo, Sudan, and Palestine. It is a live document, so I continue to add people and organizations that I think are important to the causes in these regions. And if you have it like that, please donate like that, particularly now. I think it's important. I want to specifically highlight the Watermelon Sisters. They are a organization that has been providing food, mental health care, art therapy, water, medication, hygiene supplies to those in the Gaza Strip currently. And I just want y'all to especially pay attention to that collective group of people and what they're doing in their mission. And if you have it like that, again, donate down below. That being said, after we get all those things out of the way, I do find it interesting that I'm always in TikTok drama centering the topic about genocide. What is that about? If you don't know, my name has been dragged through the TikTok streets for several days at this point. We are on the backslide of it. No one's really talking about it anymore, which is great. I can have a break. I love that for me. I inadvertently started the drama around the accountability archives. Okay. Now, if you're not on TikTok, if you don't know what that is, I will explain it to you later in this video. This video is going to have some scholarly stuff. This video is going to have some mess. There are a few people that I'm going to direct some ire towards directly. And the context clues, they'll know who they are through the context clues. But I will likely bleep out their names if I say them at all. And, of course, I will do a breakdown of why I'm in this drama in the first place, because I can't seem to close my fucking mouth. That being said, without further ado, let's start this bitch off correctly. Dun, dun, dun. Poet June Jordan wrote an essay in Essence magazine called Black Folk and Foreign Policy in 1983. Now, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of our Black publications used to be kind of about that action. They used to publish activists and revolutionaries and people with ideology that our people needed to hear specifically. They used to highlight things like op-ed pieces by our intellectuals and all of these things. And all of a sudden, all of those things have been erased from our media specifically, and to replace it has been a lot of capitalism or people promoting like Black-owned businesses and not a lot of Black intellectual radical thought. But I wanted to start off this video talking about this essay because my friend Charlie, who I love, recommended me the podcast Getting to the Root of It with Venus Roots, and they were talking about Audre Lorde versus June Jordan and their outspoken support for the Palestinian movement, and how oftentimes Audre Lorde gets a lot of the attention for being the one that was outspoken about Palestine, when June Jordan herself, in her practice and in her politic, was way more aligned to global solidarity and not capitulating to Zionist publications. And because of that, her work was definitely dimmed. Her light was definitely dimmed in comparison to Audre Lorde. And that whole podcast episode changed my life, particularly when they were talking about the essay that I'm about to discuss. Black Folk and Foreign Policy in the 1983 issue of Essence magazine. I just want to read a quote. Now, this I can't find anywhere. I can't locate the actual document for this. And I think it says a lot when it comes to where our priorities lie. You know, it wasn't in any of the Essence archival things. It wasn't in any scholarly journals. This little mini essay that she wrote for Essence magazine in 1983 has fallen off the face of the earth, quite literally. And if anyone has access to the original, please send me a PDF copy. But this is what I mean by the importance of documentation and archival work personally, because I could not find the full thing anywhere. That being said, I could find this excerpt. Inside the big house, our mothers and our grandmothers worked down on their knees so that we could stand up. They kept their eyes on a house ahead of them, a house full of family come to freedom. Now we sleep inside that big house. We will let ourselves and our family in the field just grovel down and die, domesticated by Demassa? Or will we join our cousins in the field and clean it up? Now, this particular excerpt in this particular essay is talking about Black people in the imperial core, meaning Black American people in the United States, and the roles we play in capitulating to the power of the imperial core and allowing us to get lulled into comfort by our modicum little level of privilege over our cousins and our family members, our diasporic family in the global South. We are within empire. They are outside of empire, meaning they have to deal with the bombing, the wars, the militias that we fund, the things that we cause, the genocides that we cause, the famines, the greed, the debts, the assassinations, the destabilization of their governments, while we in the imperial core are protected by the imperial core, but at the same time, we still face a lot similar violence and persecution within the imperial core. Now, I wanted to start with this specific excerpt and reference this specific essay because this is what I'm seeing all across my TikTok timeline, right? And this in particular defines my personal politic, right? I am someone who wants to build solidarity with people in the global South, outside of the American imperial core. I want to build solidarity through shared experiences collectively by the same people that continue to perpetrate these things throughout communities, throughout time, whether you're in or outside of the imperial core. I'm not in the business of centering my own trauma as a Black American woman and saying and talking about how that is the worst trauma to ever exist and that no other people deserve to have a similar attention paid to them, particularly if they're not within empire. And when it comes to politics, specifically identity reductionism post 2024 election, I've been seeing a lot of me, and not a lot of critical thought about how we got here and why you have to protect me so much. And the fact that people would rather fight tooth and nail to save a shitty life compared to that's full of student loan debt, credit card debt, paying for childcare that you can't afford, a house that you can't afford, natural disasters coming out the wazoo, constantly having to fight for your rights as a Black person or as a person in general that's marginalized in a society that forces you to work and attaches work to your health care, your insurance, your ability to live a healthy, productive life. Y'all will fight tooth and nail to keep yourself in the same position that you're in instead of daring to dream of a future that could be different. Daring to dream of a future that could be equitable. Daring to dream of a future where you could be fucking happy and content and feel good and safe and have cultural exchange with people that are different than you. There's a lot of we'll get more into the election because that's definitely a part of it. But I wanted to make that clear initially because a lot of people after this drama were trying to tell me what my own politics are. And this is what my politics are. My politics are solidarity. My politics are marginalization. My politics are centering all of us and building the solidarity amongst our groups and shredding away the fracturing and the distrust that these corporations and these people and these entities have been trying to push between us for hundreds and hundreds of years in order to kick them out of power and to build a coalition with people who actually have experienced the harshness of the world, right? A lot of people try to tell me who I am on TikTok this past week and who my where they're aligned to, what they are. And I just want to tell you this, and this is the only thing I've publicly said about my personal politic. I'll never confirm nor deny where I stand and what I am. I'm of the politic of Madison. Okay, that's where I stand. That's what I am. I have clear morals on what I believe is right, on what I believe is correct, on how I think people should be allowed to live their lives with dignity, with peace, with access to healthcare, with access to a roof over their head, collectively being taken care of by their communities. These are the tenets of the politics that I live within, that I value. Okay, but I've told people publicly on TikTok, particularly when I was talking about the election, that I, for one, am not going to sit there and go through a ballot with you and tell you what to vote for and sit there and tell you and campaign for free on behalf of a politician who likely won't do anything to change my material circumstances for the better. Point blank. And if you think you know me, you likely don't know me. I grew up with 4 grandparents. I'm an old soul, and I was taught not to speak on these things in mixed company because it's unnecessary. You can deduce where you think I am based on what I say and what I choose to talk about, but it's likely that you will never understand fully where I am politically, and I'm not going to help you with that. I think that's an important point. On that point, politically and specifically, because I do want to touch on this a little bit, in terms of my standing socially on the app. I stay where people like me, and my algorithm feeds me things of people and creators that they know I will like. That being said, there are people who actively do not like me on the app in a deep and very passionate way. And the only way I can explain why I think that is to go back a year to the Jouelzy situation. Now, before we get into this, I have a full YouTube video talking about this situation, so hit the link in the bio. Definitely check it out. It's there. It goes into detail where I was during that time. It's very fresh. It's like a couple days after everything happened, so go check it out. But just in the speed round, just so y'all know, I had cracked 130K by myself. I'm a virtual nobody. I had been slowly and steadily growing my platform. I had cracked 10K on YouTube by myself. By that time, I was around 11-ish K around the time that the Jouelzy situation happened. And I was building a Substack slowly. I was monetized within 6 months on my YouTube channel, monetized within 6 months on my TikTok in 2022, respectively. I was steadily growing. I definitely wouldn't have grown as fast as I did had the situation not happened to me and had it not been a net positive for me and the people I was able to connect with, the mutuals I was able to grasp, and all of those types of things. But I would have hit these marks regardless. And I just want to make that clear. I'm confident in my work. I'm confident in what I say. I'm confident in my point of view. So it would have happened. It just probably would have taken longer. I say this to say, I think a lot of people after that situation felt like they transactionally did me a favor by jumping in on my behalf, and some of the successes that I've had since that situation could be attributed to the fact that they jumped on my behalf and that I owe them something. But I just want to make it clear that I would have made it regardless, and I was slowly chugging along to chip away at my personal goals of influence and following and all of that. Just want to put that out there. I was monetized before that. I've gone viral several times before that. That is just the biggest situation I've ever been in, and because of how it was handled, it turned out to be a very positive situation for me in terms of community building and building up the people that really fuck with what I gotta say. In that situation, there's a few groups of different groups of people that came to my help. There was people who actually fucked with my responses and fucked with what I was saying and wanted to learn more. Those are the people who are on my Substack. Those are the people who follow my book club. Those are the people who are on YouTube. Those are the people that have followed me on every platform and enjoy the content that I provide on every platform, right? We had people who are just following the mess, which I understand because I'm a messy bitch who lives for drama as well. So they were just following me and would likely unfollow me or not, depending on if they remembered or not. But they wanted to keep abreast on what was going on and what responses could and couldn't be happening in regards to that situation. And then third, there were people who followed me because I was a Black woman in distress in the moment. And this is a particular group that I want to talk to directly, because this is a group that turned out strangely to, I think, be the most fickle with me, because I think in that situation they projected who they wanted me to be and what they wanted me to say in the instances that happened after the Jouelzy situation, i.e. Kamala Harris taking over the ticket, Donald Trump's assassination, the campaign, the 100-day campaign with Kamala, and subsequently the post-election bullshit and all of this and all of that, right? But the reality is none of these people knew me. They didn't know me for real, and they weren't engaging in my content like the first group. They weren't hearing me. They weren't listening to me. None of the politics that I had pre the Yuval situation had ever changed post the Yuval situation. I was just choosing to be more vocal because we were in campaign time, and this campaign was unprecedented. And I was seeing a lot of things happening based on my historical pattern recognition that I think I needed to call out based on what I've lived through and what I've seen historically. And that is when the break off started to happen with this particular group of people, right? I think they felt like they helped me, and the fact that I was sitting there actively campaigning against a Black woman in their eyes and, you know, critiquing her publicly and all of these things. Mind you, a lot of creators were, and a lot of creators caught heat for it. People like Mecca, Jamila, people who don't even really, they talk about politics for sure on the platform, but they really center in like social commentary about what's going on the timeline, and they had critiques for Kamala Harris. And y'all really literally said, shut the fuck up, this isn't the time, when it's exactly the time, right? So I was saying my videos, and that specific group of people really didn't fuck with what I was saying, really didn't fuck with my videos, really didn't feel like, you know, I was for them and for the team. And so I started to drop off and lose a few followers that I'd gained from the Yuval situation in that situation. As time wore on, obviously she lost the election. And as I was more vocal with how I felt as to why, namely shielding a lot of Palestinian people who I thought were right within their rights to not vote, shielding a lot of people in terms of, you know, people who were very vocal about why and what their red line was in terms of supporting candidates. I got the anti-Black flag kind of put on my jacket from there. Then if we're going to take it further, we get into the Beyonce discourse, which is really repackaged election discourse, because many of the same lines were drawn in the sand, and team this versus team that were many of the same people. And then from there, we kind of get into the Kendrick discourse, then the segregation discourse, then the apathy about all the natural disasters that were happening and how they were red states, and we kind of wind our way here. What happened to me this past week was based on the fact that people don't like me based on my political opinions. People don't like me based on my takes. And I have been associated with being an anti-Black person based on two instances, namely Kamala Harris criticism and my Beyonce take. And I'll address that here. Let's just keep it 1,000. With the Beyonce take, I made a video, I think that may have been my third video of the Beyonce conversation, where I was clocking a lot of the bullshit that y'all were putting down, to be honest. There's a lot of people that were coming at hand on a personal level, and unfortunately were unable to truly engage critically with what she was saying. And because you couldn't, you took jabs at her family structure, you took jabs at her appearance, and honestly, she's only been proven right the more and further we get away from that whole conversation. And I hope she makes a YouTube video about it in a year, talking about how y'all dragged her, how you stalked her family, how you found all these pictures, how you were hitting up her friends, how you were acting completely unhinged over a billionaire that wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire. It was odd, right? And so I made a video talking about some of the language that I was seeing in regards to hand, because to me, this was an interesting conversation. It could have been, you know, people bringing up different sides, talking about the rodeo culture, talking about Houston, Texas, talking about the different things that you can see very clearly in what she's trying to evoke. And people could counter with their opinions. As I said in my first video, this is dinner party conversations where it gets maybe a little heated, but everyone's able to get along because there is a mutual respect for the fact that people are allowed to have differing opinions than you. But instead, it got so nasty because all of a sudden people are getting called out of their names, and the Kamala Harris stuff comes up, and people are just letting the chopper sing on creators that they feel like lost the election for them. And I basically made a video saying, I think a lot of y'all are projecting onto Han. I think a lot of y'all are projecting on the fact that she's a light-skinned individual who's speaking up and saying something that you don't like. So now her blackness is in question and she needs to shut up. And now she's speaking out of turn, right? And I think a lot of people have a lot of internalized issues with colorism in terms of how they may have been treated or what they were perceived to have been treated back when they were growing up that have not been unlearned yet. And a lot of that confidence comes from your ability to knock people down a peg rather than rising your own self up a peg. The things that I was hearing, her appearance, she's ugly, she's a light skin, she's a white woman, she's a Karen, she's a this, she's a that, just because you didn't agree with what she was saying, you know, and she was a biracial person. Like, no shade, but my blackness is one of my best attributes. I think I'm the finest bitch out there, even if you don't. And it's one of those things where my confidence truly has come from within. And it's been a struggle, but it's one of my proudest achievements to be as confident in myself as I am, to the point that I could really give a fuck what a bitch has to say about me. And their judgments about me, whether it's my appearance, how I dress, I don't care. Because I like me. I like who I am. And because of that mentality that comes from within, I would never attack somebody based on their mulatto-ness because I didn't like a take that they had about a singer. And not just a singer. We all know Beyonce's Beyonce, but you know what I mean. Like, it got really disrespectful and really weird. And because I made that take publicly, I was, you know, shielding a white woman. I was anti-black. I was white-centered. And that was a really particularly brutal beef for me, in the sense that I lost like 3,000 followers in like a weekend, which was fine. But again, that was the beginning of the end with a certain group and demographic of people on this app in terms of how they perceive me. And I'm okay with that because they're entitled to their opinions. But they have had so much vitriol for me and have been ruminating on these takes for months, to the point that whenever I make a take that they don't necessarily agree with, they will come out their neck and say something disrespectful to me or purposely mischaracterize what I'm saying for the means of trying to take me down a peg and starting drama. And that's how this whole thing began. Because y'all have not been well since the election. Y'all have not been able to speak to people with respect since the election. Y'all have not been able to heal through the trauma that you felt during the election. And no shade, it's self-inflicted because the information has always been there. The information about whether or how likely she was going to win has been there. There are people who are at the DNC, places that you have not been invited to, who are sitting there talking about how a lot of people and delegates knew that she was going to lose once she got up on stage and said, we have the most lethal army in the world in the midst of a genocide that her current administration was a part of. You see what I'm saying? Like, there were missteps that people were clearly telling her along the way. People were telling Joe along the way. And for some reason, y'all have all of this smoke for people who are left-leaning people, who push for equality, who you likely have more in common with than you don't, who don't want student loan debt, who want universal health care, who want universal childcare, who want paid maternity leave for you, who want you to be able to live a fulfilling life. That is what they're fighting for. But you'd rather associate and malign them with people like MAGA fascist conservatives because you can't look yourself in the mirror and say that, hey, genocide wasn't a hard line for me. Instead of having smoke for the DNC, who ran Joe Biden in the first place when he should have been a one-term president, despite having no smoke for the DNC in terms of why they weren't bringing someone up to excite the Democratic Party and the youth, all the statistics and information is out there. I saw someone today say, like, oh, you guys point to statistics, but they only tell one story. There's many statistical studies post 2024 election that bring and highlight a lot of shit. It's not just why she lost. And it doesn't just simply boil down to her being a black woman, which that certainly is a part of it. But it boils down as well to the fact that she did not differentiate from her previous administration. She did not have clear-cut laws and plans to help the economy. She was not thinking of the future of this country. She's talking and campaigning on fracking in 2025 when, if you look around, 2025 has had so many crazy weather situations that are like once in 1,000 years situations, and it's only going to get worse. She ran a Republican-like campaign to try and get people to not vote for Donald Trump. She capitulated right, and she instead didn't capitulate left to the people that would have voted for her had she had some clear-cut answers on certain things, like the genocide, like student loan debt, like housing, like the houseless problem for people, like, you know, healthcare, all of these important things, like free college tuition and dealing with tuition, you know. But she didn't do that. And that's the point. She decided not to do that. And so she didn't get the votes that were waiting for her to say something to discuss that. Mind you, the entire country has been shifting right in general. But this is my Kamala Harris rant, right? A lot of people have been unable to grapple with the reality of why she lost the election. And so they spread vitriolic mess on the timeline and have made the app all but insufferable because of all of these cumulative things.
I had some of the most ridiculous takes during the Accountability Archive outrage cycle because people could not sit with the fact that they could not see it for the archive, the flash drive, whatever it has to do with that, because of the group of people who they saw come to defense of Maddie first and promote this archive as something that they are also participating in and they're going to take folks down with. At the root of people not seeing it for the archive, it's not even an anxiety for everyone about being in that archive. It is about having a previous bad experience with a group of people who most people would define as leftists, and seeing them in community with Maddie and therefore not seeing it for whatever this flash drive is supposed to be because of the bad experience you've had with these creators. And it is okay to not trust the intentions or integrity of something based off of previous experiences that you've had with people that are standing behind a project. It's okay if that gives you caution or gives you pause, but I think people were trying to stretch out, one, producing a lot of content and engaging in the discourse around that, and therefore trying to stretch out arguments against it when it really just comes down to, I had a bad experience with this person. I don't trust what they do. That person's not Maddie. And maybe that's why you kept trying to defend it. But it is okay to say that I see this particular leftist promoting this flash drive, and I don't trust them because of the experiences I've had with them and how antagonistic they've been. But getting on here and trying to make the argument that an archive is anti-Black, how does the algorithm work? How does your For You page work?
So if in my case, you were someone who is openly criticizing Kamala Harris, you get something pinned on your jacket for being anti-Black woman, anti-Black person, anti, whether the information is verifiably true or not, you get associated with a group of people that ruin the election, and you are now the scapegoat for the Democratic Party's failures. And that's how they do it. And that's how they want to do it. That is McCarthyism. But that's a conversation for another fucking day. Because of how harsh the lines have been drawn, y'all interact like this is a fucking team sport and not a place for people to just share ideas and tips and talk about their life with you. It is very much team red, team blue, team black, team white, this or that. You're all in or you're not all in. And what annoys me is that because I openly support certain creators that you don't like on the timeline, you associate with me with them, and you associate my politic with them. You associate the fact that because I'm friends with them, I'm in a cult, when I may agree and may not agree with certain ways or certain approaches that they go about things, but I do appreciate what they have to say. And it seems like y'all always pick and choose when I'm up under people's comments or being supportive, because I have mutuals across the political spectrum that I've been able to maintain regardless. No Republicans, obviously. I mean within the left-leaning, left of Republican sector. And I've been able to maintain those friendships in real life as well as online in terms of the mutuals, because they get me and they understand that. And maybe we don't talk explicitly about certain things, but they appreciate my input and I appreciate theirs. And it's a genuine respect. If I don't agree with them, I don't sit there and try to beat them over the head and call them out of their name and make sure that they feel like shit because they're not capitulating to what I believe is true. That's not how I move. Maybe we'll DM about it if people want to ask me questions about my position, but more so than not, I let them rock, because I know at the end of the day, they are good people. They are nice people, and they do care about the world, whether they're frustrated or whatever. It's y'all who've made this app insufferable. It's y'all who continue to talk about teams and talk about this and talk about discourse in this way that if you said this on Beyonce and said this during the Kamala Harris campaign and said this during the Kendrick performance, you're associated with this group of people, and we cannot for the life of us ever get past that. And it's sad because now there's chaos agents who don't like me on the app and intentionally spread misinformation about what I said because they take everything I say in the worst possible light, created fear and paranoia around my flash drive on the app, and then sicked a bunch of people onto me, then turned around and called me and my following base and the people who support me in the comment section toxic because they were trying to dogpile me for something that they misunderstood and never went to the source to understand, never opened their ears to hear or understand. So then now when people are defending me in their comment sections, I'm toxic even though you jumped into a conversation unprovoked and no one asked for your fucking opinion because no one cares about your fucking opinion. And now you're calling on me to fix that for you because you made a fool out of yourself and you can't handle even a whiff of the heat that I've been going through for the past almost 2 weeks straight. If you can't handle a comment in your comment section that's likely a bot, mind you, how do you think I feel? Getting thousands of videos made about me misrepresenting what I was trying to say and what I was trying to do in the first fucking place. And I get it. I take the heat. I'm not going to sit here and complain about the heat. As I said in my live with Big V, I'm not crying about the heat. I'm not coming on here begging y'all to stop and everything's hanging by a thread because I know what you're fighting is a phantom of your own creation. It's your own paranoia that you created into a physical being, put my name onto it, and freaked yourself out about. And it makes no sense because almost nothing that y'all were spreading about me really is true. Y'all said that I didn't when I was backpedaling when I clarified my statements and said, hey, it's not just TikTokers, it's a bunch of other people. Y'all believe people when they said the original video was deleted, even though it's been up for weeks and will remain up. I don't delete my things. I don't really have to. In this instance, I didn't have to. Y'all will then spread that information so nobody watches a full 6-minute video where I talk about the politicians and I talk about the people who are still Zionists right now, and I do spread my humanitarian link. But if you thought that video was already deleted, then you are just going to go by the clips that people have intentionally made to make me look however you want me to look. It's not called backpedaling. It's called front pedaling. Because I doubled down on the fact that some of you bitches are in the hard drive, and it's true. Some of you bitches are in the flash drive, point blank. And you deserve to be there. You do. And furthermore, a lot of the creators that jumped on the bandwagon, because that's the thing with these things, it gets weird when it's like people that you follow or people that you respected or like their content are like in comment sections or making videos to join in on the conversation that are so negative towards you when they definitely could have access to you or ask you a direct question to see or to verify their information. And that's why when I made my video addressing the bullshit 2 Saturdays ago, I made a point to say that a lot of y'all's credibility is shot. Y'all were making up stories and then you scared yourself with those stories. No one tried to go to the source. No one tried to DM me. No one tried to ask questions. Ask people who tried to DM me directly. And ask them what I said to them in the DM. I was very clear about what my mission was. I was very clear as to what I was saying and what I was doing and why I was doing it. And a lot of times, I think 100 out of 100 times, 100% of the time, these people were in these comment sections, were in my DMs, apologizing for being so mischaracterizing of me and my positionality, whether they made videos, whether they publicly apologized, whether they privately apologized. Your credibility is shot, and all you bitches look like are the messy hoes that you are, spreading misinformation to fuel chaos on this app so y'all can be on live for 12 hours trying to make coin. Y'all are the chaos actors that you try so desperately to have us be. We are just saying things, and to be honest, a lot of y'all don't really understand what you're engaging with. One, either because you aren't engaging in the source material and you refuse to do right by your followership to go research anything before you bring it and regurgitate it back on the timeline. Like, how many people said it was a Mean Girls burn book? Could you count that? It was hundreds. How many people said that I was weird? Could you count that? It was hundreds. How many people said that I was surveilling and doing a police panopticon thing? Can you count that? It was hundreds. How many of you had an original thought of my flash drive? How many of you went to the source material and thought about your feelings about it before you made it your own personal video jumping into the conversation? None of you. Instead, what you did was copy and paste the same narrative that you heard other people say that you follow and regurgitate and regurgitate and regurgitate until the point that the rumor we got so big, the rumors were coming back to me, and I was sitting there so confused about how y'all could take this from one thing to a fucking other. All of a sudden, I'm dropping it. All of a sudden, people have seen the list. All of a sudden, people are doing all this toxic stuff in my name, and I need to clear people's names about being on the list. And all of a sudden, y'all are running with your heads cut off. And, oh, the videos that you said didn't exist 2 months ago actually do exist, and you're freaked out. And now I'm canceling you and the future, even though I said I was never holding it against anyone, and I wasn't going to hold it over your heads. And all of a sudden, I'm going to sell the things, and I'm going to drop it behind a paywall in 10 days. And y'all are ridiculous. You are dumb. You are ridiculous people who created a phantom image that you're shadowboxing that was never what I said. It was never my intention. And it's ridiculous. It just is. Now, if you want to get to the real story of the situation, here's the thing. On July 25th, 2025, I made a video. I will insert that video here. I just want to get on here and say the North remembers, and it will always remember. Months ago, I came on here and said the same statement and said, I have a flash drive where I've been documenting all the people talking about the Palestinian movement, talking about Palestine in a negative way, particularly the liberals who are using it as a gotcha moment because people didn't vote for their candidate. I have all your videos, boo, in a hard drive, okay? They're labeled, your name's there, it's all there. Because this is what happens, in history, right? It takes people hindsight to realize how fucked up something was. Even though people who were there in the moment were screaming about how fucked up something was. People will sit here and tell you to your face about slavery, the mass raping, the brutalization of the black body, all of these things, and they'll tell you it was just a sign of the times. That's what people did at the time. When there were people during that time screaming about the abject immorality of owning another human being. There have always been people who've opposed the status quo in history. There have always been people who said the quiet part out loud, even though people didn't want to believe them. And what we're seeing Israel do to the Palestinian people, what we've been seeing for over 75 years at this point, is culminating into a manufactured famine. And we are about to watch thousands of people die. They were drugging the flour. They're shooting people who are at the aid sites trying to get a little bit of food. So now people are scared to get any kind of help, to get any kind of nourishment. And the blockade continues. And it's so fucking dark to see all of these fucking Democratic politicians who were supporting endless blank check spending to Israel for their weapons, for this stupid one-sided war that they were going to lose anyway, mind you, because this was never going to last, This is going to end. Palestine will be free. They will never be able to come out of this situation at all in a positive light, no matter what y'all say about it. This is a death rattle, and it's just unfortunate that it comes at the cost of innocent people's lives unnecessarily. And this is my thing with the genocide conversation. As you know, season 2 of the Bloodstain podcast will be centering around genocide, and what you find is that genocide is only bad in hindsight. people will sit here and scream at the top of their lungs, we need help, look at what's happening to us. Well-documented instances that fall under the definition of genocide, and the powers that be won't do anything until they're forced to apologize years later. The North remembers. I have been keeping a fucking flash drive of you bitches on this app and the nasty, terrible things that you've said just for my own documentation purposes to prove that y'all were not on the right side of this shit when it was important to be. This goes for women, this goes for black people, this goes for anyone who's marginalized by this white supremacist society. The perfect victim is a dead one. And it isn't until people can't deny what they're looking at any longer that people start to have any kind of little crumb of morality about what they participated in. So for anyone who is still a Zionist after all this time, for anyone who still supports Zionist creators and creates excuses for them, for anyone who still supports Zionist entities in general, the North will remember. I've been documenting, I've been archiving, and you will never, ever be able to live this down. It is so dystopian to see all of these news outlets and all of these fucking politicians coming out to finally say something on Gaza, and they've been silent for almost 2 years, or they've been actively trying to both sides a very clearly one-sided issue. It's an objective truth that we've been watching a genocide for years. It's an objective truth at this point. So all these people who are trying to, in the last minute, clear their names, and I did say something, and I did say this, and I do feel, no, baby, the North remembers it all. All the money you took from AIPAC, all the funding you took, all the money you sent off to that place, we will remember, we will calculate it, and you will never, ever be able to live this down. Link in my bio. I have a working humanitarian list in my bio. It's there, linked in the link tree. Donate what you can. Donate to Baby Judy. Donate to the people in my bio, please. Because I was seeing a lot of backtracking, true backpedaling on the timeline from politicians, from creators on this app, for things that they've said, right? Particularly regarding the Palestinian movement, particularly regarding how they treated certain Palestinian creators, particularly regarding people like, Hillary Clinton and Obama and people who are going to vote to give more money to Israel anyway, who are personally funded by AIPAC. All of these people were coming out to talk about the level 5 starvation in Gaza and how it's reached the point and how it's a final solution and this is a man-made famine and all of this and all of that. And you know what? I'm glad people recognize that. But the phoniness of the statement, within the context, because it wasn't just the fact that y'all people jumped out of a window saying crazy ass shit after the election, revenge reactionary ass shit after the election. It wasn't just that. It was a double down. It was how you treated Crutches and Spice when she said that those videos existed. And then you said she was a liar and smeared her name and her reputation by the thousands because you didn't like the fact that she remembered that those videos existed. It's the way that you claim those videos never existed, yet and still you were scrambling like a chicken with its head cut off when I said that I had a flash drive with said videos in them. When people started to regurgitate those videos back onto the timeline and y'all T was clocked. We were trying to warn you. We were trying to let you know that even in the most difficult, dire times when it seems like the night is so dark and this was a disappointing election and people didn't want Donald Trump to be president, and yes, we're going into a scary place in this country, you wanted all the grace in the world to be able to come out of your neck and say Islamophobic, xenophobic, fucking problematic shit about what people are actually going through in terms of genocide. Quite literally, that we've all been watching. And the thing that gets me, and this is the thing, because people were sitting here like, can't there be grace? Like, people can change their mind. Change your mind about fucking what? And for the how manyth time? A lot of these people that I'm talking about on the app were very vocally pro-Palestine when Joe Biden was running for president. They were calling him Genocide Joe. They were upset with the administration. They were raising money for Palestinian families. They were being very, very, very deliberate about that. Right? But then after they didn't get what they want out of the exchange, when human rights isn't transactional, it just kind of is. It's an objective truth. No matter what people feel about you or how you perceive people to feel about you, no one deserves to fucking live through a genocide. No one deserves to starve to death. No one deserves to be ethnically cleansed from their land. I don't give a damn. There are objective truths still. But because you didn't get what you thought you deserved out of the exchange, even though she was a part of an administration that was killing families, whole bloodlines were being wiped off the face of the planet because of her administration that she was co-founding with Joe Biden. And then she goes on stage in the midst of this and continues to say, yeah, I'm not going to do anything different than what Joe Biden has done. And then she goes on to say Israel has a right to defend itself. And then she goes on to, Tim Walz goes on to say that Israel has a right to expand and it's all its military proxies. And y'all sat there and said she did not support genocide. That's the story that you're making up. The smear campaign didn't exist. We were going based off of what she was saying. No need to smear. This was a hot button issue, and it's not a single issue. It's the fact that you can't have affordable health care. It's the fact that your road has 17 potholes in it and your car gets fucked up every time you drive to work. It's the fact that you don't have paid maternity or paternity leave. It's the fact that all your things are associated with whether or not you are able-bodied enough to work. It's the fact that, you can't get a free education here. It's the fact that they are using the environment to poison Black communities. It's all of the things are wrapped into this. It's the hyper policing, it's the cop cities, it's the hyper militarization of our police in this country. It's all of those things. It's not just one issue. It's literally all of the issues. It's the original sins of this nation state projected in modern time. If you ever wondered what you would do if you were alive during the genocide of the native population of this country, you are currently doing exactly what you would have done back then. No matter how you try to romanticize it, no matter how you try to shift it in your mind, you would be doing exactly what you're doing now, which is nothing, or cheering for it in some cases. But that's the thing. Y'all saw it. Y'all knew it. Y'all named it. Y'all condemned it. And then when it was transactional and you didn't get your side of the bargain perceptively to you, you then flip-flopped and said, fuck those people. They deserve it. It's on them. I'm done. I'm done being a martyr. I'm done using my Blackness to help people. Black people always do this. Black people always do that. We always save everybody and don't nobody want to save us and this and that. While that is a feeling that gets internalized and that's real, it is completely false for people to then come out of their side of the neck and say that nobody ever helps us and no one was out there marching with us during Black Lives Matter except for other Black people, and we didn't have a multicultural coalition in every civil rights movement that we've pushed in this country. It's just ahistorical, and you're just mad. You're mad at the fact that anti-Blackness exists in almost every community on this planet, and it's fucking true, and it is fucking annoying, and that is a big issue. But you saw with your own two eyes what was happening to these people. You condemned it. Then you cheered for it because you didn't get what you wanted from it. Then when genocides continue to happen, as they do, and it got worse, you then realize, hey, this is getting really bad and I need to say something. No, that's not someone that deserves grace. That's someone that knowingly is selfish and only thinks of themselves, centering themselves in their own politic, doesn't consider other people, and frankly doesn't really understand how this whole bitch works for real. That's what that is. That's someone who's throwing a temper tantrum because they didn't get their way and now is trying to clean up the mess that they think people forgot already because they gaslit people several times over the course of the 8 months that those videos didn't exist, even though they were still up on your page. These are not things you give grace to. These are things you confront. These are things that you say, hey, you need to check that behavior. You need to check that nastiness behavior that came out of you during that time. And this would have been a perfect time for people to say, hey, I was emotional. I really was emotional, and looking back, I don't even recognize myself. I want to say this, and this. I don't agree with what I said, and people would add that and tack that to your story. She said this, but then she said this.
I think the reason that people are very angry about the idea of accountability archives is because it reminds them that they are a part of history. They cannot actually remove themselves from real life, from meat space, so to speak. They would rather everything stay in cyberspace, and they would rather there be a segregating wall between the two instead of the reality, which is that there's a tether between them. Everybody knows, at least in my side TikTok, everybody I think knows that what you say online does impact how people really move through real life and how they think about real things that are really happening, right? But people who are, I'm seeing, calling the accountability archives like chronically online behavior, I think don't understand like what the point of archiving something is, right? The point is to build a real story. Like it is so that way that history cannot be written from such a muted lens from the people who actually, executed the goings on that people are talking about, right? Like these are real stories. These are real people's real perspectives about a real thing. Like all that is, I think the word accountability is maybe where people are getting lost. Like, it's really just a historical time capsule. Like, this is showing how real people really talked about a real genocide. And the people who are being angry about it, I think are uncomfortable with the fact that, like, that's how they will be remembered. But what I want to remind them of is you can always disavow it. If you look at the things that you've said, and you're in that archive, and you find shame in what you said or how it is that you will be perceived, because that's your record, you can still create the record. You can always have grown up and said, oh yeah, like that was the thing I said out of fear and anger, and I was displacing my feelings in a way that was inhumane or cruel, and I disavow that. You can always say that, right? And that will still be a part of your complete story. You can always amend it so long as you can speak, right? But like, the weirdest thing to do is to pretend as though it's some kind of gotcha that you really existed as a part of a moment of history and you chose how your mark would actually look, right? And like, I know that it would be more comfortable if we could just pretend that like we're all just a part of this infinite scroll, we're all just a part of content, and that content itself is like frivolous or something like that, but it's not. Right? Like, I'm going to be real. A lot of the same people I'm seeing be angry about this are the same people that speak out of both sides of their mouth, where they say, on one hand, leftists are just chronically online. All they do is talk online, but also say that leftists influence elections. It's like, you can't have both, right? It's either that everything exists online and it doesn't matter, or everything exists online and it matters because online is nothing more than a mirror of what it is that we're doing in real life. And so like, you got to choose. If you don't like who you are in the accountability archive, I'm just going to call it the archive of online activity of the Palestinian genocide. If you don't like that, I would suggest you change it, because you still can. You can still acknowledge that what is going on is genocide, and that for a brief moment, you said something that was fucked up. You had a bad take, you made bad jokes. You could still do that, and it would still be a part of your story. You do not have to just like let that always define you. Unless, of course, you do stand by it, and you don't like that you got caught, right? Because that's different. That's not that you don't like that, like, somebody's making an accountability archive. It's that you don't like the idea that you will forever be known as the person who said that thing. And you don't like what that means, that people will then know how to treat you because of it. And that's different. That's a different thing to solve for entirely.
But y'all are too stuck into these teams that are non-existent. This red team versus blue team, this black team versus white team. The line has been drawn so heavily in the sand between people on this app and creators on this app that you can't even admit when you fucked up and when you was wrong. That was wrong. That was shady. That was fucked up. It was the endless lives about Maya. It was the endless lives about other Palestinian creators. It was the endless lives about this and that. It was you putting Palestinian activist pictures on the back of your lives while people are actively being disappeared for speaking out about Palestine. It's all of it. It wasn't just the videos, y'all. It's the way y'all were acting of plumb fool, because the person who said that they were going to continue to support this genocide didn't win. Mind you, something that people who were there, people in the campaign, people at the DNC, her own running mate, knew this to be a fact. You guys will sit here and scream about leftists and Palestinians all day and refuse to pick up a book, pick up an article, look at the data, go to an event, go to the experts. They have had interviews. They have interviewed statisticians. They've had so many different polls that have come out in terms of why she lost and how she lost. Y'all will refuse to engage the data, but sit up on live and just spew a bunch of bullshit, which is based on your own personal feelings that you saw on your own For You page, not even the totality of the internet, and claim that that's factual and that's true. Unserious. Mind you, these are the same people who said it was anti-black to critique Kamala during the campaign cycle. Then they said it was anti-black to... These are the same people who say it's anti-black to critique Obama. These are also the same people who said it was anti-black to critique Beyonce, and a biracial should have no space in these conversations, while also, for some reason, Kamala Harris and Barack Obama are thought to be fully black and fully understood and supported by the black community in a different way. Then it's anti-black to critique the Kendrick Lamar performance at the Super Bowl, and then it's anti-black to critique Kamala Harris's campaign compared to Zoran Mamdani's campaign, and it's anti-black. It's just always anti-black with you people.
At this point, I'm just tired of watching y'all drag a black woman up and down my timeline who is challenging the status quo, who is, very aptly, pointing out the limits of our identity and the limits of our politics and how we need to grow and evolve, because we are in real danger, and it is going to take much more than just us isolating ourselves away to be able to be free and be able to challenge the world building that's happening that would have us permanently removed from it, right? Like, there is a reason I've really started truly referencing my videos, APA 7th edition and all, right? And that reference list will be burned in at the end of my video. So if anybody ever cites this, or if anybody ever wants to archive this, right, exactly what I referenced, all these kind of things. Because it's just like, at this point, we have to be committed to rigor as much as we can in all aspects of our life. Because the stakes are too high for us right now. They're just too high to be willy-nilly about how we engage larger things. And at this point, it's like, if people really do have an issue with Maddie, I expect the work to be rigorous. I expect your point to be done in a way that is rigorous. It doesn't necessarily need to be fully cited and da-da-da-ra-ta-ta, right? Like, that's just what I like to do. But it needs to be up to par. And a lot of y'all are just not up to par. And I'm just tired of y'all coming after people, thinking that you're saying something or you're gagging somebody. And it's like, no, girl, no. It is because of our ancestors' rigorous and principled behaviors that we are where we are today. Why we know what we know today, and how we've been able to be change makers and envision truly equitable futures and challenge the status quo. And I don't want people to forget that. It is through their citation, their archiving, their referencing, their building on that knowledge, building on that tradition, that we are here today. And I need y'all to really clock in and remember that. I think the thing that scares me with a lot of these discourses is, to me, they signal a death to the Black radical tradition, in a time where more now than ever we need that tradition, we need that rigorousness, that principledness, right? We need to be rejecting things like AI that are siphoning away our intellectual capacity and ability and quietly killing our communities through environmental racism, right? Like, we need so much more to be done to ensure our survival, and not just our survival, but to thrive. I mean, I think ultimately what I can glean from all of these discourses is that the expediency of the internet has fried y'all's brain to the point where you are rushing to put out several videos a day. And in that kind of dynamic, there is no time for proper citation or referencing. There is no time for deep thought. There is no time to examine the intrapersonal, the interpersonal, and the societal. All there is quick, cheap scripts with a gotcha moment that makes y'all feel as though you can absolve yourself from the ways in which you've helped to create this active world building that is harming everyone. These moments, these discourses need to be remembered not as gotcha moments between people, but as a way to help examine the tension of people pushing against the status quo versus those maintaining it. And really, ultimately, to look at how we got to a point where all the work our ancestors have done is being improperly used, never cited, and the work associated with our liberation is now being treated as a threat rather than a painstaking task that is meant to give us the perspective to make different and better choices. And I need us to really clock that. And you know what? Since we're talking about citation as a part of the Black radical tradition, I just want to say something right now. As it pertains to misogynoir and anti-Black racism, the way y'all are beating these terms to hell is pissing me off. If Dr. Akua Benjamin, she's the one who coined the term anti-Black racism, and Dr. Moya Bailey, she's the one who coined the term misogynoir, could see the way that y'all are misusing their work to engage in this like identity shielding and like resisting of owning up to your own harm that you've engaged in, I know they'd be sick of y'all. I know they'd be sick of y'all. Anti-Black racism was meant to describe how prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, and discrimination that is directed at people of African descent and rooted in their unique history and experience of enslavement and its legacy manifests in current social, economic, and political marginalizations of African Canadians, because that's where, you know, she was doing her work. But obviously that has expanded to encompass much more people in the diaspora, right? And this shows up as, you know, unequal opportunities, lower socioeconomic status, higher unemployment, significant poverty rates, and overrepresentation in the criminal justice system, right? Misogynoir describes the hatred of, aversion to, or prejudice against Black women. Okay, now that we got those definitions, I just want to say this. Nowhere in these definitions does it say that y'all should be absolved of having to face your historical record of harm and the ways you still perpetuate that harm. It doesn't say Black people should get a pass for the ways in which many of y'all helped to craft the societal conditions that silence critiques of a Black woman in a prominent political position who is helping to facilitate genocide because you felt as though you were owed an election. Nowhere in these definitions does it say because of Black people's political marginalization that we get a pass to excuse our own complicity, or in some cases, for some of y'all, active championing of genocide. Nowhere in these definitions does it say we are entitled to be harmful because the baseline state of the world as it exists today is anti-Black and entrenched in misogynoir. I think a lot of y'all need to sit with definitions, what they're meant to do, the limits of them, why they're limited in their description, the consequences of their over-application, and how they are misused and can be misused. Many definitions of things can be used to help obfuscate the dynamics of a situation, and I need y'all to really sit with that because y'all do it all the time. The last thing I want to say in this section is I find it funny how y'all call Maddie anti-Black and that she's engaging in misogynoir when the literal basis of her politic is centered on challenging the status quo and dismantling the conditions that would even give rise for the need for these definitions to be created and used in our broader cultural context. I also think it is very odd how y'all say she is threatening y'all in this very visceral tone that to me signifies a deep hatred towards a Black woman in this moment, especially because this Black woman is one who is not letting y'all slide and is demanding better from you and how you engage in the global systems at large. I think the claim that Maddie is anti-Black and invested in misogynoir is what y'all choose to weaponize against her inappropriately because you want to bring her down to how y'all actually engage. And what y'all are hoping is that because of who Maddie is and her politics, your claims of that anti-blackness and that misogynoir won't be easily questioned. Because we all know how black people who challenge the status quo get treated and how y'all don't like that. And because y'all don't like that, you're willing to drag them up and down the timeline. You're willing to mischaracterize them, misrepresent them, despite the fact that the legacy of so many black women who have shifted our world and our politics to make us more free has been in alignment with what Maddie does, not with what y'all do.
But I'm the most anti-black bitch on the planet. It doesn't mean anything, and you've made sure of that. You've made sure it's just used as a shield to protect yourself from having any accountability for what you say or having to watch what you say because you're black. And as June Jordan said, you're protecting a crumb of respect, a crumb of privilege that you have in empire. You're not even thinking about your diasporic neighbors. You're not thinking about the people in the global south. You're not thinking about how you relate to those communities. By living in empire, you benefit from the exploitation of those communities. You don't even have a critical thought in your mind about how you engage with the world outside of the United States of America. You can't critically think outside of your own victim complex, to the point where you're turning on your own, who are sitting here trying to tell you, hey, baby, hey, the statistics said this. She said this. We need to be thinking about this because this was never meant for us. So why are you trying to be nationalistic and loyal to something that didn't even want you there in the first fucking place? You were cattle. You were property. You are not supposed to be considered. The reason why things are harder here for you is not because they're just twice as hard for you to get half as much. It's because they're actively trying to kill you and eradicate you, because your existence here, much like the Native Americans, threatens their power. And that's the truth. But yes, let's fight about the society that doesn't like us even a little bit. Let's fight about it. Let's pull people's black cards because they're bringing things to the table that you don't want to critically engage with, while you use the shield of anti-blackness or protecting black women to then do the most anti-black shit I've ever seen. Again, I've never accused a random black person on the internet of sexual assault just because of vibes. A black man, mind you, with all of those implications. What are y'all hiding? What do you not want to be brought up? I will never forgive you bitches for what you've done to my identity. I will never, ever in a million years. Because you have eroded all meaning from it. And you won't know now, and you won't know 10 years from now, but give it 20 years from now, you'll see exactly what you participated in. Honestly, fuck you. In the deepest way.
You can't be against the accountability archives if your whole content is archiving other people's videos to try to hold them accountable. It makes you a hypocrite. If you're constantly clipping other people's videos in your video and using them to talk shit about them because you want to hold them accountable, but also because you want to get more views by using their clipped video, you never just reference what they said. You always clip the video that you have archived for accountability. I've said this before, and I know I'm biracial, so I'm not under the protected class of blackness being sacred, but I've seen this happen to monoracial black people too. When certain creators decide that they don't like your video, you know what I mean? And they decide that they don't like your point. Even if that creator is dark skinned, they will go after them, calling them anti-black. And this is against pro-blackness. We are dulling the weapon and the tool that is the words anti-blackness and pro-blackness. And we're using it for silly reasons due to what you have decided is like responsible and respectable accountability, when lots of people think it's disgraceful. Lots of people think it's abhorrent. So when you see people say, wait, is this play about us? It's like, okay, they just didn't realize that they were being watched too. They just, I've said this before, people want to criticize the discourse, but also be above the discourse, but always need to be a part of it. You know what I mean? And I think people forget that, like, people are watching them too, and they don't like that. And so the response to the accountability archives, which to me, I'm surprised it's getting this negative backlash, because people literally feed from accountability culture. They literally get paid from it and eat off it, and now all of a sudden they find it anti-Black. And it also is suggesting, this is the craziest part to me, I'm seeing it be suggested that Black people cannot be harmful towards the narrative, towards Palestinian people. And that it doesn't matter, and it's just like, chump change? What are you saying? I'm so sorry, but like, Black people very much have the ability to control a good amount of the narrative, and that matters. And to cheapen that because you want to use your favorite buzzwords, it's just silly to me. And ultimately, I can tell you for a fact it's reductive. This is not how you build coalition. This is not, I actually had a piece that I did in college about like, no one is free until we all are free. And the way that different oppressed groups try to, cheapen each other's movements and tear each other down is why the white man will continue to win. And the biggest agents of this white man continuing to win are creators like this being like, oh, well, this is just disingenuous. And come on, you guys, we need to value they don't realize what they're doing, but what they are doing is saying, well, whatever Black people say, it doesn't really matter because they get to say whatever they want. So, but here's the thing, if you discard the things that are, talking about, oh, well, it's going to be a parking lot, you are cheapening the value of the Black word when you're saying, well, none of it matters and it's so irrelevant that anybody ever said that. No, this is a serious movement and it's a serious thing and words matter. And it's like I think the reason that I guess people are assuming the main people in the archives are Black is because there was a moment in time where there was a little bit of like a, let's get our shit off. And I think it's worthy. I think it's worth investigating that sort of impetus and response. It's worth investigating that sort of response, I think. I don't think it's worth just like throwing it down the drain and why are we even looking at these things? And it's so anti-Black that we're even looking at it. No, I think what we're looking at is like that very, very sticky spot between oppressed groups when one movement is upset at another movement for whatever reason, and then the way people try to retaliate, it gets fucking weird. It gets weird. But just because it gets weird, that to me does not mean it needs to be completely dismissed and like forgotten about because again, there's an air of, well, Black people said it, so why do we care? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, we should care about the narrative that we're creating and we should value that, positive or negative. I think you need to be like, yeah, that matters. It matters. And to be so like dismissive of the accountability archives, but like separate of all the other things I said in regards to like, obviously it's hypocritical. I also think what you're saying is a dangerous sentiment of the words that we're saying don't matter when we're hurting. Other people are hurt. Like, it's a sticky conversation. It's sticky, but just because it's sticky doesn't mean you're exempt. And here's the point of the video. We are talking about a presumed exemption that happens to not actually be one. Meaning, I think a lot of times, now again, this is a part of the video where you might want to not hear a biracial person say this, but whatever, I have these thoughts and I get it. And I get that, and people are allowed to have that, by the way. I'm not even mad at that. I'm just saying I acknowledge that it happens. So if you don't want to hear me talk about, like, some people don't like when I talk about race in like a deep way and talk about Blackness. They think I don't belong in this conversation. And I just want to acknowledge that you're allowed to think that, and you're also allowed to scroll. Because I'm going to be talking. There's sort of some people feel they have an exemption from accountability because of the situation they feel that they're in. And while we can get that, I don't think it's hateful to then look at it and say, do you still believe this? Is this you? Because guess what? That also presents people the opportunity to say, no, I was just upset and I was wrong. Nobody's emailing these people's jobs and brands saying they shouldn't work there. Nobody was doing that, but somebody might have had an idea to do that at some point, and there might be some overlap here. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like there's sort of a presumed exemption that is not always accurate. Here's the point of the video. Often there is an exemption because we're often talking about groups of people who are obviously less oppressed than Black people, so you can get your shit off most of the time. This is probably one of the only times. No, I'm not going to say one of the only times, but one of the most obvious times that this exemption is not applicable. When we're talking about Palestine, the way that Black people often get to like joke and punch up, this time it wasn't a punch up. It was a very, very much a punch down. It's not a punch sideways. It's a punch down. And people don't want to grapple with that, and they don't want to grapple with the morality of that because they're used to being able to punch up and get their shit off without anybody checking them. And it's normally very valid. And it's normally very funny. And in this situation, the whole, watch me eat Starbucks in slow motion because Gaza's going to be a parking lot, it wasn't funny. Do you get what I'm saying? And there's this perceived exemption from the rule of, yeah, if white people did those things, it's obviously not funny because they know that they're punching down. Black people don't always know when they're punching down. Not all Black people. Not all of the time. But I think that's what's happening here as a reaction to literally, oh, is this play about us? I thought only we could write this play. But it's coming from other Black people, which is why we can't be like, oh, this is all anti-Blackness. We need to find other words to describe specific situations, because when you wear out the heavy hitting tools and like the most effective weapons with shenanigans, oh my God, when you need it, it's not gonna pack a punch the way it used to. None of these words pack the same punch and sting that they used to, you know?
Nope, don't give a damn. Nope. Nope. I'm trying to find out how much them condos are gonna run, because I know they're gonna be pretty over there in Gaza.
I want to be clear. For me, this conversation is not about targeting Black women. It's not about protecting and defending Black women. There's nothing about that video worth defending, worth protecting. The words that came out of this lady's mouth, one, I will never forget her face. I will never forget what those words, hearing those words for the first time come out of the mouth of somebody who looks like me, made me feel indefensible, unconscionable, depraved. How many more words and adjectives I could use and employ to talk about how sick and twisted the combination of those words together being uttered on camera, and then to go a step further and post it on a platform. I'm not defending that. I'm not protecting it. And at this point, this idea that like we're collecting these tweets and these videos to target and attack people, it's an ego thing for y'all. It really is, because it's not about you. At this point, it's not about her and anybody else who participated in this violence. At this point, it's giving the people who come after us a fighting chance to never allow this shit to happen again. People like this woman are representative of an ideology, rhetoric being espoused, products of a failed educational system, representative of so many failures that happened to our community, that happened in our community. Somewhere, at some point, something went wrong. And this is the result of that. And that needs to be documented. How many days, weeks, months, years are we into this genocide? For you to have seen these babies be killed. I'm seeing bodies ripped, torn apart, limbs all over the place. To see what these people have gone through on camera and to come online and say this, these folk are in the throes of starvation, being killed, murdered, mutilated, and you jump online and say you can't wait to see what them condos is going for in Gaza. Give me a fucking break. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. This is the type of shit that should land you on lists, let alone a fucking flash drive. What? Shame is not even enough.
Now, I want to talk about the accountability archive that it's been dubbed. And I do want to make it clear, because people were trying to get at me for all of that shit. Okay? People were then, like, what annoyed me about this situation is how crazy the misinformation ran, and then how crazy and dedicated people were to just misunderstanding me instead of just admitting, hey, I spoke out of turn. There were 2 people that apologized to me publicly, and maybe 5 privately, that said, hey, I fucked up, I'm deleting my video, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or I learned more, and I appreciate what you do, da-da-da-da-da, like da-da-da-da-da. That's 7 people out of hundreds who made videos about me for the past 2 weeks that came out publicly or privately and said, you know what, I fucked up, I got misinformation, I'm going to rescind, or I'm going to do this, this, and that. That's insane. The perfect example of how much misinformation was spreading was, okay, there are a couple creators that don't like me, as I previously explained why. And those 2 creators, either I'm blocked or they've blocked or I've blocked them. So I don't watch their stuff. I don't see their stuff. I don't really know what they're doing. But their videos were screen recorded and sent to me. And these 2 creators were the first 2 people to jump on the fact that I had a flash drive. And those videos were the first to dub it an accountability archive or a Mean Girls burn book. From there, the videos tumbleweeded into an entire thousands of videos, hundreds of videos made, thousands of videos made possibly about this entire situation. And all I can trace it down to 2 people being the earliest adopters of that terminology. They dubbed it the accountability archive. They are people who dubbed it that. It wasn't me who dubbed it that. I never called it that because I know what the real accountability archive is. And that's really the gag. That's really the gag. Because what happened with that is then y'all used those videos as reference videos, didn't come to the source, probably didn't even know where the source was. And from there, you took their opinions about me that they were projecting and took it upon yourself to make your videos. Now it was a flash drive full of Black women only. Then the list was this, and I'm attacking only TikTokers, and it's full of this, and it's full of that, and the misinformation got crazy because of the people who took the information and ran with it. I know who the fuck you are. Mind you, it took y'all 3 days. 3 days until the first video came out that said, actually, she never called it the accountability archives. 3 fucking days for anyone to go to my main page and to watch the videos in full. Nobody did that for 3 days. Then the narrative got switched to, well, yeah, she didn't say it, but it's still, she should take it upon herself to distance herself from the accountability archives, which is real work that people are doing. When y'all were actively spreading the misinformation, what do I have to take responsibility for when I didn't call it that? You were spreading misinformation, got caught up in spreading misinformation, and now you're mad at me for not distancing myself from the misinformation that you spread about me. It took y'all 3 days to say, oh, well, she didn't call it that, but. And the true gag about the accountability archives, which is a real thing that does exist, that's been existing since 2023. There's one about Palestine, there's one about Lebanon, and I think Syria. I'm not completely sure of the third one. But it's scholars, it's journalists, it's a bunch of people who have a website where they have been collecting, people have been uploading and collecting videos for almost 2 years now about what has been going on. And currently, there's 85,000 entries. The gag is, y'all are mad at me about my flash drive that I wasn't going to share with the public anyway, no matter what any bitch said. When the true gag is when they drop that accountability archive and you may or may not see your face on it. Some of you there's probably some overlap on my personal flash drive that I'm not going to release and the actual accountability archive. You can't bully them to take that shit down. You can't create a TikTok controversy out of thin air to force them to close that website. That's going to be up there forever. So y'all are running around and freaking out over a flash drive that was never going to get released, that was never meant to hold you accountable, that was never going to be held over your head to try and dox you and get you fired, that no one has ever seen except for me, that no one doesn't know where it is except for me. But your ass may be plastered on the real accountability archive for the world to see. And y'all are too caught up in an individual TikTok creator and her flash drive. Because mind you, people have terabytes of shit. And they're more petty than me in terms of who they put in the flash drive or their hard drive. So even if I don't have you on it, you may be on someone else's. And that's the other gag. There's a bunch of people that were DMing me like, oh, I've been doing the same and I have terabytes full and I have this and I have that. And, I'm just waiting. There's a bunch of people. There's thousands of people who have been saving what they've been seeing about this genocide personally. I just admitted it. But again, the true gag is that true accountability archive that has 85,000 entries that people from the public can upload to, and they're sifting through them now to see whether they're relevant, and when they make it public, it's just going to be up there. That's the gag. So continue to freak out about me, because your ass you might not even be on the flash drive, but you might be on that accountability archive for real, the real thing, with the scholars and the things and the yikes. What I'm doing isn't crazy, and I want to close on this because I'm kind of tired of screaming at my screen. What I'm doing isn't crazy. What I'm doing isn't random. What I'm doing isn't out of step with anything that's ever been done before in human history. It's a very normal thing. If you have a journal, you're doing what I'm doing. If you have a video diary, if you have a blog, you're doing what I'm doing. You're doing some sort of archival work in some capacity, in some way. Okay? But the gag this is the other gag. A lot of you are the same people who can't think of original thoughts in terms of your content, and all your content is clipping, stitching, trying to embarrass, trying to hold people accountable. But half of you bitches have accountability playlists on your page, and you're trying to clock me for having a flash drive that I was never going to share to anybody. Your whole lives are trying to get people canceled, trying to get people fired, trying to get people to feel the consequences of perceived slights that you feel that they should feel. Whole time, I'm fully researching and having original concepts of my own. Full stop. My content doesn't stop and go when another creator makes something. I make my own shit. I have my own brain. I have my own ideas. I don't need to wait until y'all fuck up to have a week's worth of shit to go live about. I have so much to go live about just by living and existing. I have original thoughts. My content isn't to police the app. That's what you all do. It was so much projection. It was crazy. It was actually mind-boggling and a little concerning. Some of the people that thought they could step to me and talk outside of their neck to me with the content that y'all make, please give me a break. Before I get into my entire 10-minute long likely diatribe of what this video is going to be about, I do want to start off by saying that I've seen a ton of different videos, people have come to my DMs, and I've been contacted by a bunch of different people who are in charge of different Palestinian specific orgs that I have added to my humanitarian aid link, as well as some other families that I've added to my humanitarian aid link. So please, before we get into my entire diatribe, I do encourage everyone who's watching this video to hit the link in the bio, scroll down to my humanitarian aid link, and help one of the families on that link, whether it's Congo, Sudan, Palestine, whatever you can manage, all three. If you have it like that, that'd be wonderful. But I do want to receive some of the criticisms that I've been getting for leaning into the mess a little bit too much. And I do want to correct that. I think it's right that I correct that. And I think it's important to correct that. So I've gotten, tagged and DM'd about different organizations. Of course, a ton of different Palestinian families have hit me up directly, and I've added them to the link specifically. So definitely go in there, donate what you can. Let's get into the rest of the video. August 6, 2025 marks 80 years since the American government dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, it dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki. It has been 80 years since Americans all over the spectrum have been taught about this history in a very, very specific way. That history is taught to us in high school, in elementary school, in our history books, by our history teachers, in most of our documentaries, as a positive thing. That it was a necessary evil in order to prevent unnecessary bloodshed if we did an all-out ground invasion. Mind you, 147,000 people died when the atomic bomb was dropped in Hiroshima overnight, instantly, and that still doesn't cover the hundreds of thousands of people that are still affected by the lingering effects of that bomb being dropped in the middle of a civilian city 80 years later. We were taught that it was necessary. We were taught that it was a good thing. We were taught that we ended the war by using this extreme, unheard of amount of force on a civilian population. And it wasn't until high school, and it wasn't until I watched the documentary A Fog of War, that that entire sensibility was challenged. It was challenged because there's a clip, which I will insert in this video, that shows the truth of what we were doing in Japan during World War II. Military offensive was dropping incendiary bombs on civilians in so many different main cities in Japan. Incendiary bombs are bombs that set an entire town ablaze, essentially. And in many of those nighttime fire bombing raids, hundreds of thousands of people were killed in a single night. And when you watch this documentary and you watch this clip, you understand that what we were told, as Americans particularly, about the necessity of dropping this bomb was not the truth. It wasn't even nearly the truth. It wasn't a necessity. In fact, Japan was pretty close to surrender when we were even thinking about dropping this bomb. And the bloodshed that happened because of these bombs was not nearly comparable to all the bloodshed that happened through the fire bombing campaigns that happened during the night. Now, I wouldn't know this had someone not taken video of those bombing campaigns and saved them. I wouldn't believe it, probably, if someone hadn't taken video of those bombing campaigns while they were happening and put it in this documentary. Now, I told y'all a couple videos ago that this docuseries that Ryan Coogler has me in a complete stranglehold. I mean, it's incredible, it's heavy, it's jarring, it's scary, and as we kind of near closer to the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina in this country, the same feelings I started to have when I saw that clip of the firebombing campaigns, I started to have watching the Hurricane Katrina docuseries that Ryan Coogler is doing. Now, mind you, I've seen when the levees broke, I've seen a lot of these things, but this docuseries is much longer, has much more footage from people who were on the ground, and is interviewing a much larger population of people who were there and experienced it. And it's going much more in depth into some of the stories that were only kind of slightly touched on in the When the Levees Broke documentary, because we've had 20 years to think about it and get the evidence and record it and find the videos and document the situation. And of course, this entire documentary is full of footage that people were taking by themselves on their own of their personal experience surviving Katrina. I was alive when Katrina happened. I was 9 years old when Katrina happened. And I remember the outrage that Kanye West sparked when he called the spade a spade and said that George Bush does not care about black people.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
I remember that. I was there for that. And even though there was a lot of pushback on how George Bush and the administration dealt with the people who were affected by Hurricane Katrina, the news organizations were kind of in line with the administration and how they were dealing with it. They were calling these people refugees, even though this was their own country, this was their own home. They were spreading misinformation about looting that was very racially motivated and racially targeted during the time. I do really, really remember that. And of course, when Kanye West said that, it was met with a lot of pushback, because the official narrative really was, yes, it was mishandled, but was it a race thing? And that was kind of the lingering question in the air. Was it actually a race thing? As we watched this documentary with Ryan Coogler, it was 100% unequivocally a race thing, and Kanye West was right. But the reason why we know that is because of the firsthand experiences, the documented footage, the very clear, unequivocal proof that George Bush did not care about black people, and America did not care about black people when it came to those most affected by Hurricane Katrina. It wasn't so much like overt bombing of the levees. It was the fact that the levees were never built to withstand any kind of storm of this magnitude in the first place, and it was abject neglect. I've said this so many times in so many videos on this page, in my podcast, all over my content consistently, that it's not just the fact that it's twice as hard to get half as much as a black person in this country. It is legitimately the fact that we are in the throes of a genocide. The state is actively trying to kill us and make sure that we don't survive, and none of us are really supposed to be here. And when you see what happened with Katrina 20 years later with all this documented on-the-ground footage, you realize how true that statement is. George Bush, America, does not care about black people. They are actively trying to purge us from existing on this land, no matter our claims to it or whatever. And that statement is only challenged by the fact that people saved footage for over 20 years, and someone like Ryan Coogler went into these communities and was able to string together and produce an incredibly telling narrative that counteracts and completely challenges the status quo narrative that's out there about Katrina. That's the same thing with the Hiroshima situation. Someone filmed the incendiary bombs, and later, I don't remember when the Fog of War documentary, I think it was maybe 2005, but I could be lying when it came out. But when that documentary was released, it directly challenged the status quo of what we are told happened in our history books about that situation. And I can't help but think of my situation amongst this. What's going on in Palestine is not only a flashpoint issue, it is a completely layered, tangled issue of almost every issue that's wrong with this country. It has to do with how we are policed as black people, in the hyper-policing, in the surveillance state, and the militarized police that we have to deal with on the ground. It has to do with cop cities showing up in every state near you. It has to do with, the original sin of this country, settler colonialism, and what the effects of that are, and how it does have genocidal impacts and genocidal effects. It has to do with our entire governmental system and how it's bought and sold to the tunes of millions, billions of dollars, and no longer is it representative, if it ever was, of us as a people. It has so many different entanglements to the issue. And for those thinking that, black leftists, black people who are left of you are hyper-focused on this issue, this is why. It includes all of it. It encompasses every single thing. And I know the statement, it's all interconnected, everyone's issues are interconnected, has been beaten down through a lot of people's heads throughout this entire thing that we've been watching since October 7th, 2023. But it is very true, particularly when it comes to the case of the Palestinian people and what they're going through. You can superimpose even, the fact that Israel drugged the flower, and you can, compare that to the chemical warfare that was played post-civil rights movement in our inner city communities with the dropping of crack cocaine. And you can also superimpose that with what the Chinese government went through, the Chinese empire went through with the Opium Wars, and people did draw a lot of those connections at the time. I say this to say this. I know that there has been a lot of different takes and opinions about my flash drive, which isn't the accountability archive. But when October 7th happened, I saw in real time the state employ all aspects within its power to flip the narrative, to make us and try and convince us to believe something that we were seeing with our actual eyes. Not only seeing, we were seeing officials from Israel posting, we were seeing the cartoons they were posting, the things they were discussing. We were seeing the genocidal intent in how the IDF was posing in Palestinian homes, how they were raiding through their stuff, going through underwear drawers of the women. We've seen the videos of the absolute denial of SA, or the hyperfixation of SA happening to Jewish women, when there's actual video proof of what happened to Palestinian women and men in their custody, and protests were actually had about being able to SA these prisoners that were taken during this time. And the entire time, the state has told us to ignore what you were viewing with your eyes, to ignore what people were happily and gleefully posting on the internet, to ignore the fact that AIPAC funds, I believe it was 100% of Republicans and 70% of the Democratic Party, and how that affects how people are voting, to ignore what happened to Cori Bush, to ignore what happened to our elected leaders when they were primaried because they were outspoken about Palestine. And in some ways, that happened on this app. The videos that people are scrambling, some videos that are still up, the videos that are resurfacing, not by me. I've made it clear that I have not shown anyone the flash drive. No one knows who's on it. People are offering to buy it from me, and I have refused many, many a time. Like I said, this is for private use and posterity only. And again, proportionally, the amount of TikTokers on my flash drive are relatively small to all of the other shit that I just named. But the state has been telling us, the news has been telling us, both sides of the news, and even our own people have been telling us to ignore what we've been seeing. On a smaller scale on this app, I was told that these videos don't exist. In fact, there was an entire few-month drama on here between one of my mutuals and a lot of other creators, some of the similar ones that are talking about me now, saying that these videos did not exist. And as this situation gained more steam, these videos resurfaced. And a lot of these same people are upset that not only do these videos exist, but many people, not just me, have saved them in their own ways, whether they have terabytes of stuff, like I've heard people have, whether they're submitting it to an accountability archive, the actual official version, whether they're saving it and bookmarking it for themselves. Either way, they've been saved and people have them. And that entire situation was a microcosm of what I was seeing happening our entire nation state do. Deny that we saw what we saw with our eyes. And that's why it was important for me to, in my opinion, to say that I have the videos. I have many videos. I have those videos that a lot of people said did not exist. I think it's also important to note, because a lot of narratives have been made about what I intend to do, what it is, the value of it, whatever. You can argue with your mom about whether or not you think it's valuable. My thesis statement the entire time I've been on this app, the entire time I've been making content, has been that history is legitimately a true crime story. And part of that true crime story is a sanitation of the official record. And it's only times, like I've described there, where personal archives, personal video, personal proof is shown at a wider scale, strung together in a documentary, put together in a podcast that challenges the official narrative of what happened. Whether everybody reads it, whether it'll be in an official textbook, whether any of my flash drive will be relevant in the future, it's for the future to decide. At the least of it, at least my kids will know the truth. Again, I have been offered money to release these drives. I have been in the DMs, and I have denied all requests. People have been asking me to drop them, begging me to drop these drives, and I have denied all requests. Anyone who says they've seen the list is lying. Anyone who says or knows who's on my flash drive is lying, and that's just the point blank truth and the facts of the situation. I'm still making a YouTube video, of course. This is something that I do, and there's a lot more conversations that I think are valuable within the TikTok messiness of this discourse. There are a ton more conversations that I think have happened as a result organically of this that I think are worth having, and worth having in a long form way. You can never make me feel weird for making a YouTube video about something that I experienced. And I do think it's important to really say my feelings and say my piece in a long form content way. Am I exposing the flash drive in this YouTube video? Nar. Like I said, no plans on releasing it. It's going to be for my personal use. And whatever that means is what it means. Again, never called it the Accountability Archive. Never said it was an Accountability Archive. That is a name that was dubbed. I have my theories from where, but the rumor weed and all of that. Being said, all my videos are still up. I know that that's another misinformation that's floating around. Videos are still up in full. You can watch the full things. You can watch the full situation, not deleting any of them at all. And the YouTube video is coming out. So yeah.
The weirdest part of this whole thing was the fact that you were going to sit here and act like what I was doing was so random and so crazy and so malicious and so out of turn and so ugly when y'all make your own content centered around this entire concept, number one. But number two, this is something that is important to do. And you're never going to make me feel weird about doing that. You're never, no matter if this flash drive has the secrets to world peace on it, or if the only person that sees the contents of this flash drive are my children, who will finally know the truth of what happened and can tell and talk and teach their kids about the truth of what happened, that's impactful either way. That's important either way. I made a 13-minute video that strangely didn't get as many views as the drama-filled and the bullshit-filled ones, of course. But in that video, I talk about the importance of what I'm talking about. What I'm doing. There are specific narratives that get pushed by society. And it isn't until more information is found, documents, firsthand experiences, interviews, our real first-person experiences, primary sources, secondary sources are found to challenge that we start to question what we've been told and why. I talked about how we're taught about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the truth of that. I talked about how we were taught about Hurricane Katrina and the truth of that. And all of those things got challenged by people on the ground, either sharing oral traditions, sharing their stories, or having real life documentation and footage and proof of the truth of what happened on the ground. If people told you, hey, there were white people hunting down black people like the fucking purge during Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people would think you're overly dramatic and you're lying. But when you watch that Hurricane Katrina documentary produced by Ryan Coogler, you see that there are white people admitting to hunting down black people during Hurricane Katrina. We are taught that we are the best country on the planet because of how we helped in World War II. We came in late. We came in with the bank. We saved all of Europe. We freed it from tyranny. We killed Hitler. We did all this stuff. We dropped the atomic bombs. We saved the world. We did the thing. We saved the people. But it isn't until you realize that the reason and the legislation that let me. If y'all have ever seen the movie Origin or read the book Cast, you know this. But there's a document. There is a document called Minutes from the June 5th, 1934 Nazi Race Law Meeting. Okay? This is documented proof that the Nazis were looking towards the United States for their race segregation laws that they were going to input on the Jewish people in their community, or the desirable people in their community. They were basing the segregation laws that they used in Germany during that time on how they treated black people and how they treated Native American people. These are laws about mixed race marriages. These are laws about where people can live, how people can live, what jobs people could have. They base that off of the United States. But if you listen to the United States talk about this history, they will say that they were the best guys. They were the good guys. They saved the world. When at the core of it, they inspired the Nazis to do what they did. They inspired the Nazis with the specific dehumanization laws that were used to lead to the genocide that ended up happening in the final solution. These are minutes from a fucking meeting, closed door meeting with high up Nazi officials who are coming up with the legislation to be able to slowly dehumanize the people that they thought were undesirable in their country. Someone saved that. Someone saved the minutes from this meeting. Someone saved that, and it was saved. It wasn't burnt up, and it challenges what we know to be the story that America wants to tell about how we showed up in that war. It may not be everything is useful in my hard drive. It may not be this. It may not be that. But one thing's for certain, I'm documenting what I'm seeing, because you never know what they're going to try and flip this in the public zeitgeist in terms of what we saw on our phones. And because people were acting a plumb fool, people will be ready to drink that Kool-Aid and play that narrative for their kids and talk about this in that way, because they don't want to admit that they were personally cheering for it, advocating for it, allowing it to happen. One day, everyone would have been against this. That's why that book is named that, because that's the phenomenon that happened. Again, I'm not saying my whole flash drive is going to upend the world order. I'm saying that there could be one small video clip on there that maybe attempted to be scrubbed from existence, that could challenge the status quo of whatever they try and lie about and say in terms of our involvement in this genocide in this country. So the fact that this entire conversation rounded out with people trying to say, well, this isn't going to mean anything. This is just TikTok. It's just not anything. It doesn't mean shit. It's not going to mean shit in the future. No one's going to care. No one's going to this. No one's going to that, was probably the most disturbing part, because I can take the bullshit because most of it was fake anyway and lies and bullshit. But the fact that y'all have gone so down the anti-intellectualism pipeline so deep that black people of color whose histories were thought to be lesser than because they were in quilts or drawings or oral histories or oral traditions are going to sit here and say, oh, no one's going to care about TikTok. Because you don't want people to care about TikTok? So much of our history, so much of our lore is passed down through oral histories or through artwork or through expression or through song or through dance. And that's the only way those stories get passed down to us. And do you not think that white people sit there and say, well, that's the whole reason why they thought they were more civilized than us? Or the Native Americans, because of a perceived lack of written language. A perceived lack of their way of civility when it comes to writing down and documenting information, because it wasn't exactly so. That means that we were closer to animals and we deserve to be conquered. White man's burden, the whole nine. And you're going to participate in that too because it's TikTok? We're in 2025. No one is even reading newspapers that are tangible anymore. All of this shit online is going to be important one day, no matter what you say. And I think that was the most disappointing of it all. The fact that people who are thought leaders or political people or historical people on the app, we're sitting here not only knowingly spreading misinformation, but also belittling the value of a primary source. This country has been moving right for a long time. This country, there's a lot going on here that people refuse to engage in good faith because they're scared. And I think there's a lot of fear about what's going to happen. I'm scared too. You know, I live here too. I'm scared. I'm a Black woman and I'm scared. But I'm trying to not allow that fear to push me into anything that is counterproductive to the world that I want to see and the world that I think my kids deserve to live in. I'm not doing that. I'm not cheering for genocide. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not turning my ears off. I'm not looking away. I'm continuing to look. I'm continuing to document, and I'm going to continue to advocate. These are choices that we make. And sure, fear is real. And sure, things are going to get worse and things are going to get scary and crazy and horrible. But at the same time, I feel the most powerful I've ever felt because I feel like finally the structures that have kept my people down so long have kept us in a perpetual cycle of genocide since we were brought to this land in the 1600s. I will be there to see it collapse. And I know I will. And I might possibly have a hand in shaping it to be a better place, even if it's just a fucking flash drive. Even if it's just a fucking podcast. Y'all are insufferable. And y'all are part of the alt-right pipeline you like to preach so hard about. But it'll be way too late until you realize that. Because you won't listen to the likes of me. Because you don't like me. And that's fine. But you accuse a lot of us of being in echo chambers. While you refuse to engage with any information that makes you slightly uncomfortable. And instead choose to mischaracterize that information and spread misinformation so that it can go away. Y'all are the people. Y'all are part of the problem. And at this point, no, I don't think any people who are left of you need to be engaging with y'all in terms of trying to teach you game. At this point, it's game time now. And if you don't see that, if you don't realize that, and if you don't realize the long con that they've been playing on your ass, and you're still trying to defend this shit, you're too far gone. I give us, I don't know. It's only been how many months? 8 months since this administration? 7, 8 months? We'll see. That being said, Black Lives Matter, Free Palestine until it's backwards. Hit the link in the bio. Hit the humanitarian link. Donate to all the causes if you got it like that. If you don't, donate to the people that you think need it the most. I definitely am highlighting Watermelon Sisters. There's another organization that's providing trying to bring fresh water to a specific refugee camp. I think it's the Nazareth refugee camp. So again, link in the bio for that. If you have it like that, donate. Fuck you. Seriously.